Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Yes and Ask Me, a show based out of San Antonio, Texas, specifically Bear Stage here in San Antonio, where I get to interview some of the local improv community's most amazing talent. Today's show is about getting the audience suggestion. As many of you improvisers know, that is when a show starts and the performers on stage will ask the audience for a suggestion to incorporate into the show. And I have a fantastic panel on the show today to discuss this and what its implications are for the actual performance. My first guest is Tina Jackson. Tina, would you please join us?
As always.
Tina.
Yeah.
Tina Jackson.
We good?
Yeah, totally.
Okay, good.
Tina, let me throw a few things out that a lot of our viewers already know. You're the owner and operator of Bear Stage.
That's right.
And you've been doing improv for a while now. You are one of the senior members of this community, not surprising.
No.
And you're this year, I believe, you're saying you've been doing improv for 20 years.
20 years, baby.
All right. Okay. I am looking forward to picking your brain about some of that experience you got.
You have to say that.
Yeah. All right. My next guest is Sawyer Wade. Sawyer, would you please join us?
Hello, a long-time listener, first-time caller.
It's
Sawyer,
true.
first time on this show. Thank you so much for being here, first of all.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. Now, Sawyer, can you give us a little bit of background as to how long you've been doing improv?
I've been doing improv for 6 years. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 4 years at the frigid wastelands of South Bend, Indiana, and 2 years in our lovely, lovely San Antonio.
Fantastic. All right, good deal. I'll be picking your brain for some of that experience, but next I want to introduce my next guest, and that is Kevin McCormick. Kevin, would you please join us?
Hello, Rick.
Hey, Kevin.
Hello.
Hello.
Kevin, I think in a different show, you described yourself as an improv baby. How long have you been doing improv, buddy?
Just about 2 years. I think the first week of July of 2018
All right.
was when I was born.
I'm glad that everybody knows when they started.
Yeah.
I'm learning to walk now.
He's my
Kevin,
little toddler.
Thank you for joining us, Kevin. I'm also an improv toddler. I've only been doing improv for about 2 years as well. So, all right, folks. All right, let me just get down to it. So, Tina,
What's up?
for all of our improvisers that are watching this, know that the audience suggestion, the audience ask, is what we do at the beginning of a show. Can you describe why we do this? Why do improvisers do that?
There's plenty of reasons to do it. One of the things that's great about improv is sort of the infinity of like what you can create on stage. So the audience suggestions is sort of a starting place, a place to start your infinity. Another reason to do it, besides narrowing infinity down to a lesser infinity, would be it's sort of a proof and like a trust building exercise with the audience to say like, we trust you to direct the sales of our show, and we will in turn create a show that we promise is improvised because it's based on something that we couldn't have predicted. We couldn't have rehearsed this show. We're proving to the audience that this show is completely based on you, so there's a trust building part of it, but also, from a logistical standpoint, a place to start your infinity, whether that's with a genre or a location or relationship or any word at all, please, a place to start from.
Okay, all right. Lower, like you said, reducing the infinity, right? Giving the improvisers something to work with right off the bat, right? Mm-hmm. And then also proving that it is improvised. That it's not scripted, and that's
I think a lot of first-time audience members and like people whose improv experience is really truly based on Whose Line Is It Anyway as a pop culture reference. I've heard many people for many years say, well, that's rehearsed, that's always like it's canned, like they know what the things are and they like they're just good actors, they're pretending that it's made up, and I've seen Wayne Brady live sing improvised songs and he's just as amazing live and in person as he is on a filmed show. And it proved to me, because they're such good improvisers, that like I know it's not scripted. I know it's not. Seeing them perform live, and it's just as good. So.
Kind of building off of that point, I think that a big part of the prompt pool, especially from the audience, because like you could very easily like either get it from other improvisers or have like a big barrel of prompts that you draw from. Like part of the reason why you want that involvement with the audience is like a very unique piece of improv that is like you're in the room, even if they aren't on stage, they are still part of this like collective experience. We're all building this thing together, and it's like going back to like the foundations of like, you know, the hooey dooey magic of improv, that we're all going to have this collective thought that we're going to grow together. We just happen to be the ones who are on stage, but you're just as involved as anybody. You're the seed of the whole thing.
I think that's one of the beautiful things about improv is how the audience is really part of the show. And anybody who's ever given an audience suggestion before, right? Like you're in the crowd and somebody asks for a relationship and you say grave diggers, and now they do the grave digging show, like that you feel responsible somehow for that show. You feel part of it, even if you're sitting in the audience just like enjoying it. That's your show. You started it. You know, you're part of the team in that regard. You're part of the creative process.
I like that idea that by just taking the suggestion and incorporating that into your show, you're integrating the audience. You're making the audience part of that show. And we had a previous episode about integrating the audience, and all of the every single panelist said that simply doing that was a fantastic, easy way to let the audience know that they're part of what's going on right now. Kevin, when we were discussing before, when I invited you to the show, you said that you hardly ever incorporate the audience suggestion, but I've seen you do it. Does it just happen instinctively for you on stage, or?
I kind of Rolodex like, okay, I'm going to draw upon the last Cupid Arrows show that we did, where we got the suggestion of sausage. So in my mind, I went from like sausage to Jeffrey Dahmer somehow during the period where the lights were out. And then all of a sudden, like me and Lynn are like, you know, she's a serial killer. She's my brother. And that's the suggestion that I gave myself based on sausage. And I think that they came out a lot better than just two people working at the sausage factory going, oh man, I don't know, we're going to run out of meat soon. What are we going to do about that? Let's talk about what we're doing some more. And do
right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think, you said Rolodexing, so I want to just go back to that real fast since we didn't talk about that. I think UCB calls it like A to C. I call it Rolodexing. That's just how I learned it and how I have projected that to our students. But the idea of Rolodexing, and Rolodex is being such an old word at this point, but like the idea of like taking the suggestion and being like, what? Yes, exactly. Like going through a Rolodex at this point, the word is archaic. But to Rolodex the suggestion is to take the suggestion and to go a step further and think, what does the suggestion make me think of? I see in the chat somebody has said, what's a good one? Let's Rolodex right now. Amusement park. Amusement park makes me think of my childhood because I went to a lot of amusement parks when I was a child. And how does that make me feel? It makes me feel excited because I was kind of a daring kid. So I might just start from a place of like, it makes me think of my childhood. I might be a daring child because the suggestion was amusement park. It may have nothing to do with roller coasters or spinny rides or being tall enough to do something, but I'm just going to be a kid who's going to do something daring because that's what the suggestion makes me think of without hitting the suggestion right on the nose. So it's still based on the audience suggestion without hitting it so obviously. And that's the thing I really prefer to do, just because I hate seeing a show where they use the suggestion in every scene. I hate it. It drives me crazy. It drives me pineapples.
It's kind of like an interesting exercise too, and like as you develop your improv brain, like what you land on, because like I would go almost the inverse route of like picking something very material, like the tunnel of love, and then I would want to like map on top of that, like because that's how my improv brain works. Like it's a tunnel of love, but we're geese in a human boat or something, swans in a human boat. I don't know. But like, it's that weird, that gives you just that little bit of a crystallizing point that lets however your improv brain work, like really start chugging out some stuff.
Yeah, it's just a different way to filter the suggestion and use it without having to use the physical noun of an item, or to to actually be backpacking across Europe. I'm seriously just pulling these out of the chat. If you don't want to be, if the scene backpacking across Europe isn't necessarily something you want to hit right on the nose, right, that you can go a little further and just be camping, or or be students between summer break of high school exploring something before college. You know what I mean? Like choosing something that makes you that is peripheral to, and that's still using the suggestion. It's not being untrue to the audience. It's still honoring the audience suggestion. It just doesn't have to be exactly what they asked for. And I think that
you can go from backpacking
leads to a little bit of the
through
artistic
Europe to like
interpretation.
another rite of passage or something, and it's still honoring the suggestion, but
Mhm.
you're not giving the audience what they expect when they're like backpacking through Europe, and then they're expecting a scene literally about that.
Right, exactly. You don't have to
more than that.
You don't have to give them exactly what they asked for. I mean, you're still artists interpreting something, and it, the show should still be representative of the performers involved. So it's your interpretation of a suggestion that I think really makes the most difference. Could we do a scene backpacking across Europe? Of course we can. Of course we can. That might be a great fucking scene, and you might want to just do that scene, and that's totally fine too. But I prefer to do something like Rolodexing, and that's definitely something we teach at Bexar Stage, is how to take a suggestion and not, sometimes people will give a suggestion and it's like, man, I have no experience with ciabatta bread. I have no personal attachment or feeling or experience with ciabatta bread, so I don't know how to do a ciabatta bread show. I feel stifled by that, or locked in a box. But what does ciabatta bread make me think of? Right? The Italian restaurant near my house where I grew up, because they always gave ciabatta bread like in a basket before dinner. And so, like we could be on a date and we maybe never mentioned the bread, but like I've put us at a restaurant because I'm thinking about this restaurant that I used to go to when I was a kid. Something along those lines. I love that Crystal just brought up the show Frenemies, because that was a Not Here show, wasn't it? Oh no, that was just Enemies. Enemies was a Not Here suggestion.
And that was the worst show we ever did, and any human has ever done in recorded history.
I'm not trying to bring that up. That's
well, Crystal did, so thank you, Crystal.
No, but taking a suggestion should, she says LOL, sorry. But taking a suggestion is a starting point that gets your whole team, whoever you're playing with, you're all starting from the same like mental starting block, essentially. You're starting this improv race together from the same location. And you might go, where I take the suggestion amusement park and I go, I'm going to be a daring child. And where Sawyer puts us as swans in a human love boat. And it's like, cool. That's where my brain went, and that's where Sawyer's brain went, and we're in the scene together. And now I'm a daring child swan.
And then we figure it out.
And what does that mean, right? We marry those two brainwaves, but we're still on the same page of like, it's an amusement park, like there's a setting involved that helps me when Sawyer tells me I'm a swan somehow in his scene. I'm like, I don't understand this at all. And he puts us in a love boat, but it's shaped like a human. And I'm like, oh, I get it. Like I can only get it because I know we're starting from the same starting block of amusement park, where I'm like, I don't understand where you want me to go with this. It helps us stay on the same page as a team to figure to have those brainwaves even peripherally linked.
If I was to like try to verbalize like that feeling, that initial like first jump, it's like really is for like when you're getting the suggestion, you're breaking down that wall between the improvisers and the audience, and you're getting like their thought, and that's like your first opportunity like to yes, and then you end it by like going crazy with your Rolodexing and expanding out. Like that's what is so inviting about that audience participation aspect, is that you're basically like giving them the most affirmative or like kind of improv experience you can by taking their suggestion and saying, oh yes, that and a whole bunch of other stuff. And it's like that, it's the purest form of that energy creation of yes and.
So sorry, I like the idea of calling it energy creation. And you mentioned earlier how the way you Rolodex, and I happen to know from watching you perform and from performing with you on stage that you always go a couple degrees further than I ever think to go. You and I were in a team together called Stuck Here For Now. There were 6 of us on stage. And the ask that we would always do is to ask for a category with lots of things in it. I remember one of our shows where somebody threw out the periodic table of the elements. I think I went for magnesium or something like that. You
Because
jump
you're a
on
scientist, right? You think
Yeah.
engineering and science, you think of the actual periodic table.
Exactly. I'm seeing the periodic, and I'm seeing all the ones that are there for me to pick from. And so I developed a character based on what I saw, and I think I chose magnesium. Sawyer, do you remember what you chose?
Oh yes, I do.
You chose the element of surprise.
Ew.
So you went periodic table of the elements. Elements made you think of something, and then you thought of element of surprise. And that was so, it was still true to the ask, but it was also something a little bit further out than I certainly was thinking, and I think the audience was thinking too.
Well, I think. Oh, I was going to say, in that scenario, I think the audience sees exactly your thought process on that, and they reward you with laughter, applause, and like they see where you've gone with it, and they're really excited about the fact that this has gone beyond what they have expected. I think audiences love watching and sort of figuring out the Rolodex. Like they feel smart when they realize what your thought process was. When you say element of surprise, they're like, what? Oh, and then they feel smart. And they like you because you made them feel smart. You know, like there's a reward exchange between the audience when you surprise them like that. And element of surprise.
Yeah, and I'll say that is like that's like a conscious tool that I have developed. I would say like if we're going into like practical advice for performers, I think that both from like my natural state, especially when I was starting off in improv, and like the place that I was at. I had a lot of apprehension performing on stage. I was coming from like a college scene, so it was like bar comedy, a really harsh audience, a really demanding audience. And so like jumping on the prompt was like the way that I learned to trick myself into like getting out there. Like, and maybe that's like manifesting in like the element of surprise now, but back then it just used to be like, I just got to get out there and scream the prompt so that I'm participating, because otherwise I won't.
Right.
Like,
yeah. It coaxes you off the back line when you have that idea. You'd be like, I better use it now. And just get out there. So I think utilizing the suggestion quickly and confidently can be like a huge boost to get you active in the show.
Yeah, and then you get your brain addicted to that, and then it wants to it really wants to do that then.
No.
Then you're hooked for life and there's no hope for you anymore.
Improv is a drug. Okay.
Hey, Kevin, your team with Jay, Friendship Mystery Solvers.
Oh, yeah.
You guys, every one of your shows, you're solving a mystery. There's a murder, and you're solving this mystery to figure out who the murderer was. But you guys have a specific ask, don't you? I think you asked for 2 different things.
Jay is like, where would you not like to be murdered? And so
so it's always a very interesting location.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we have to deal with a corpse in this location, and that's about it.
Okay.
But you hit that suggestion like usually pretty on the nose. If somebody says McDonald's bathroom, you're in a McDonald's bathroom. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, of course. But I also have a bunch of characters in my cobweb infested brain that I would like to tap into, and so I'm going to marry that with, oh, you've got killed at Chuck E. Cheese in the ball pit. well, who would be the least likely to investigate Chuck E. Cheese murder? And oh, some guy who thinks he's a painted wolf. All right, we'll go from there.
I think
I will never presume to understand Kevin's mind, and I like it that way.
Thank
but
you.
Actually, I'm going right there to Kevin's mind, and Tina to your mind, and Sawyer to your mind, that the audience members often don't know very often, maybe sometimes when it's really on the nose, like with you, Sawyer, but very often the audience doesn't know the Rolodexing process that we're thinking of that leads into our show. Do you guys ever feel that you have to balance being a little bit obvious so that you give that gift to the audience? Or are you content Rolodexing 5, 10, 15 degrees off, so much so that maybe the audience doesn't really see their suggestion in the show?
It's
Is that a
definitely going back to that college bar scene. I almost always opt to like hit you over the head with how I got from A to C. Like I'm gonna let you know, and that's largely from coming from an audience of like very, very drunk 20-somethings. Like you gotta just to survive. And that's I think it's like I'm starting to like think of the audience members as like more members on stage. That's where my brain is right now. So it's like you're backing the audience, being like, oh, I'm gonna show you how we got there, and then we're gonna go.
I think it's a style thing. I think some people are very comfortable not telling the audience how they got to their conclusions, but being able to defend it in the event that it's called into question. I've had many people before be like, you didn't even use the suggestion. I'll be like, oh, but I did. And then I'll impress them with my brilliant brain. But guaranteed the suggestion is almost every time is used, even if you don't feel like you're the one doing it, if you don't feel like you're fulfilling the audience suggestion, somebody on your team probably is. You know what I mean? So it's generally fulfilled at some point during the show. So if it's not you hitting it over the head, somebody will be, or somebody will come back around to it in a way that's a little bit more obvious to an audience. Sometimes I find that my shows are a little bit more abstract, especially in like a duo prov sort of setting where we use the suggestion, but we don't hit it super hard. And I have had people question whether we use the suggestion. But in general, I'm pretty satisfied if I just do honest art, and I know I'm always doing that. I'm always doing honest art, you guys. What a pretentious thing to say. I'm so sorry.
If number one, I just wouldn't listen to the audience at all, and yeah, I was.
And some people really don't. I think that there's something really validating to fulfilling the audience suggestion, honoring the audience suggestion, whether that's a monologue or one-word suggestion or a story that they fulfill or something. But in general, I don't want to say typical of heart players, but I'd say more typical of heart players. We've been talking several times in this show about head, heart, and X, which we have one of each right here. Is right that Sawyer goes through and says, what is a funny way that I can show the audience my step-by-step logical process to get to my C, my Rolodex. Mine is, you've heard me explain it 3 times, and it's like, oh, it reminds me of this feeling I had as a child. It reminds me of this place that I went. Like it's coming from a personal place, not like a logical brain, but like an emotional core. And that Kevin has already said he'll hit the suggestion right on the nose as far as taking the location, but then he will let something else go totally. This guy who thinks
this Battlestar Galactica episode I remember from when I was 12.
Exactly. So it's like the X Factor brain is like it'll use it and like totally throw you off at the same time. And I think that's very representative of how a lot of different people take different suggestions, right? Some people feel the need to satisfy the audience directly by using the word, the phrase, the hobby, the location directly. Some people will use it in a more abstract way, and some people will use it in a variant of those. And I think you've got 3 different interpretations of how to take a suggestion, and none of them are wrong. I mean, I think it's stylistically just a difference in how you process what the suggestion is.
Another thing I want to say about Sawyer's particular process of doing this, I have to say, and I mean this in a very loving way, Sawyer, during in Stuck Here for Now, I think you would do this, and again, in a very loving way to your performers, where if you happened to be the third or fourth or fifth performer, one of us, to go up and identify your character based on that suggestion, it felt, and again, in a loving way, like you were giving the audience a gift while flipping off the rest of the performers. Again, in a loving, playful way.
You're right. That sounds loving, Rick. That Sawyer was a big fuck you to his
sounds
teammates.
very Sawyer.
Got your back, motherfucker.
One of the show's suggestions was scents. I think somebody said scent, you know, like smells, right? I think one of us players picked a candle. I think somebody else picked potpourri. I think somebody else picked a flower. You go up there and you're moldy cheese. It brought so much interest to the show because you were something off. I'm going to throw another example out there, sorry, because you always impress me with these. The suggestion for this one was library. And again, I think we might have had book, we might have had like a word or something. You were fake plant. You go, 2 or 3 degrees off of where I'm thinking, and that's always fun to watch where your mind goes on stage. It's really interesting.
I'm specifically flipping you off, Rick.
Yeah, no.
Even if you're not on stage with me, it's also happening.
Anytime Sawyer's on stage, he's flipping Rick off.
Yeah. I didn't know it before you, but I was already doing it there.
Kevin, do you ever find that you just don't like the audience's suggestion? It just for some reason it just doesn't sit well with you.
I love this. This is a good topic.
Oh, here we go. I'm ready.
Yeah, which is why I roll a dex, because I know the audience is expecting something from like, oh, dildo, and then, oh, okay, well, I guess we have to take that. So what does dildo make me think of? And so I roll a dex.
No, I don't want to know. Never mind.
President Grover Cleveland. And so then I have a scene that somehow honors dildo and yet is something original.
Honoring dildo.
Yeah,
well, McCormick improv story.
How do you do anything but a dick show if you get dildo?
How do you?
That's how
do you? Because you
just
can't
do
it. One of the best.
For some.
When I was very young in improv, let me think. This would have been 2004 or 5, maybe. Was that just after I graduated from high school and like moved away from Cleveland, Ohio. Cleveland, Ohio got a second city for 2 years. We got Second City, Cleveland. And so I would come home from college and I'd go straight to Second City because I was like, Cleveland has comedy finally. And there was a show that had like an improv set within it. And Dana Kirsioli, who became a friend of mine later when we all moved to Chicago, but she was in Second City, Cleveland. She's a Cleveland woman originally. And she took the suggestion of somebody yelled out stripper as a profession. And I was like, oh no, these poor women, these 2 women in this show, Colleen Doyle and Dina Kirsioli, have to do a show as strippers. This is so terrible. I would hate to get that suggestion as a young improviser. And they turned it into paint strippers. Mm-hmm. And it was one of the most creative and fascinating things I saw as a young improviser that really inspired me to give the audience essentially the middle finger when they throw out dildo or stripper or want you to do something debasing. When they want you to look stupid, when they want you to do something that's beneath you, turn it around on them, man. You have every power as an artist to create the show that you want to create based on this suggestion. You don't have to do the fucking dick show if somebody else dildo. Change it. Be a paint stripper. And it empowered me a lot as a young improviser to turn a suggestion on its ass and still give them the show that they suggested, but the way I wanted to do it. And I think that was so creative and so inspiring to me, especially as a woman, as a young improviser, to realize that like, oh, fuck, they don't have to take that suggestion and neither do I. Or they can take it, but like take it their way and not give like a fucking lap dance show at Second City, Cleveland, because they don't have to.
Pretend the audience is Rick Flip them off.
This was about
That was a really big thing that I had as a senior amongst the college students, was like they're like you have to like internalize this idea of like there is no such thing as a bad prompt. I'm not saying that that's actually true, but like whenever you're considering it, you don't want to be like giving this prompt a 1 out of 10 rating, and then that quality is going to determine how much like attention you give it. Like you should be throwing your full creativity at whatever is given.
At whatever the suggestion is. That's why I always say, like, take the first suggestion you hear, because you can do whatever you like. You can do a lot with a bad suggestion. A bad suggestion is like, there's a workshop I teach on bad suggestions, and it's like using the suggestion, but like thinking a little bit more creatively and honoring the fuck out of whatever the first thing you hear is, because you can make any show you want out of any suggestion you want. And that's not cheating.
Even if the suggestion is pineapple.
It's creative. No, give me the suggestion pineapple and watch me do the pineapple show in a way that like does not mean that I'm slicing a pineapple or that I'm in Hawaii in every scene.
Exactly.
Like I can do that show, and so can you. You know, you just have to think a little outside of the pineapple.
The weird thing about it is that like especially whenever you're starting out, like there is a lot of anxiety around attacking the prompt and picking it up and doing things with that. Like, but the flip side of there's definitely ways that like you can go wrong. Obviously, like there are choices you can make that could be bad, but there's also infinite choices to succeed no matter what you're given. And that's like where you want your head to be. You don't want to be thinking about what can go wrong right at the top. You want to be thinking like, how can I friggin' spike this up into the freaking like stratosphere, man.
I love that. I love that there's an infinite. I love that you said there's an infinite number of ways for that suggestion to go right. And I think that's great, because I think it's true.
And the one way for it to go wrong is to take the literal idea and just be like,
I don't even think that's wrong.
Yeah.
It's not the way I prefer to do it, but like I don't think even taking like the literal suggestion, even if I guess if it's a garbage suggestion, that like maybe hitting it on the nose is not the right way to go with it. But I think you can have an amazing, like even if they had decided to be strippers, they could be strippers backstage talking about literally anything they want. You know what I mean? Like before a show or whatever, like you can have a really good, meaningful, interesting scene and be strippers without having to give a lap dance or get on a pole or whatever the audience expects. Like you can do a great job of hitting strippers. I don't want to say hitting strippers, but like hitting the suggestion on the nose. You can do a great show with that, or you can do a great show by turning it into paint strippers, or you can turn a great, like you can just keep, there's an infinite number of ways for that scene to go right. And honoring the suggestion is always part of it. Even if the suggestion is not something you particularly choose for yourself. So
yeah, I think my caveat was more like whenever you get those garbage prompts, like it might kick you off your heels a little bit, and then you might start doing things that are like what I would consider bad moves to be like making your scene partner unsafe on stage, things
Agreed.
like that.
Oh,
like that should be like the only failure that you're like, you know, that is your hard line no.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point.
Yeah.
I learned so much in these discussions, and they really made me think about improv and performances in a different way. So Sawyer, you blew my mind earlier when you said that it's important to have the audience's back, which ties back into the idea that the audience is kind of like a member of this performance, and they are, because they're giving us that suggestion. But when the audience gives us dildo or stripper, it's like performing with somebody that's trying to pimp you out to do something that you don't want to do. So the audience is in both ways, positively and negatively, can be like a performer in that show.
Exactly.
And just like we have to deal with sometimes, well, really good supportive performers on stage with us, but also some performers that can be difficult to work with, we have to be able to manage that effectively, fluidly, creatively.
Yeah. And sometimes I've seen different teams, you know, in taking a suggestion, and I don't want to say this in a mean way because I've seen it done really well too, chastise the audience member who yells out stripper or dildo and just be like, guys, that's a different show. That's our 10 o'clock. You know what I mean? Like, or sorry, that's the bar next door, or, you know, like, you know, to dissuade that suggestion or suggestions of that ilk, you know, to re-navigate towards something that's maybe a little bit more appropriate or something that they're a little bit more interested in performing. And so there are different ways to handle taking a suggestion when you get something you don't really like. Combine it with something that you do. Like if you hear 2 suggestions at once, but the first thing you hear is something you're like, ugh, I don't really want to take that. But let's take it with the second suggestion I heard, which was much better, and we'll combine them somehow, right? These 2 unrelated things, we'll figure out how to use motorcycle and strippers together. But like, we'll put them together and we'll figure it out. And that we'll use elements of either or both to create the show, or, you know, shutting the audience member down like a stand-up does with a heckler, in some way that still creates rapport with the audience that says, trust me, you know, we're not really that kind of team. Thanks so much though. We're not going to take a stripper suggestion because we respect women up here. That's so neat. You know what I mean? Like that we you know, that there are ways to go about it, and rapport you build with the audience the way you build rapport with a teammate, the way you build rapport with a community.
I think that's exactly right. That's saying like even shutting down somebody is in a way yes anding it. I guess it's like, you know, you're saying, oh yeah, that I acknowledge it, but, or not yes butting, but you know, you're, and I think a way to think about it is like the audience is like, if you're gonna think of them as like some parts of the show, they're like a new person who doesn't know what they're doing. Like lots of times somebody might walk in to an improv class with no experience and they do these things that are like problematic or damaging because they don't know any better. And
or they think it's funny. A lot of people think it's really funny to throw out the suggestion that's really going to turn everybody on their heads, and it's a chat. So I think sometimes they issue a suggestion like that as a challenge to the performers, like, I dare you to do it. And it's like, cool, I'll do it, but I'm going to do it my way.
I'm learning here that, and actually something that I already knew from performing in improv, is that incorporating that suggestion, the Rolodexing, that entire process is a skill that we're learning along the way and that we're continually getting better at.
And you always get better at, yeah. I mean, keep working at it. If you're new and you know, your first instinct on stage, instead of like being able to go into your head and go 3 degrees away from the suggestion, if your immediate instinct is to get out on stage and hit the thing on the nose, cool, hit it on the nose and then leave it. Don't hit it again. That's your challenge for me, is if you hit the suggestion real hard in that first scene because it's the fastest way to yes and the audience suggestion, good, do it and then go. Like move from there. Use your time on the back wall, if you're on the back line with your team, to do that Rolodex. And what does this scene make me think of? What does stripper make me think of? What does paint can make me think of? What does whatever else?
You're only supposed to be surprising the audience, so don't just make it about, oh, let's make sausage on our assembly line.
Instead, be a serial killer.
Honestly, it was a way more interesting scene. I loved that scene from Cupid's Arrow. That was so fun, you and Lynn.
Folks, it is time to end our show. I know. It goes by so fast. I want to thank my panel members. Tina Jackson, my middle square, thank you again for being on here. Yeah, absolutely.
In conclusion, pineapples.
Okay. Pineapple is always the answer. Sawyer Wade, thanks for jumping into the show. Thanks for the stories, the information, appreciate it. And Kevin McCormick, again, thank you for being on the show one more time. I hope to see all of you on this show again, and to all of our Twitch stream viewers. Thank you for watching.
I love the Twitch stream today.
Yeah, good stuff on there.
Thank you for your suggestions.
Yeah, and I got a reminder from Clint Taylor that he hates food suggestions, and I had totally forgotten about that.
No, I know how much he hates it, which is why sometimes I like asking for them.
So many different colors to one kind of scene. Love it.
Included a sex sandwich, everybody.
I was gonna
say we didn't mention sex
story.
sandwich.
No, thank God, no.
Well, when we do the extended version of this, we'll go until plenty
Well,
of
we'll
detail.
already play play by play. We'll get Steve Cercio in here to recap
Yeah.
Sex Sandwich for us.
It'll be great. Guys, good. Thank you all for watching. But let's talk a little bit how crazy banana pants it is outside right now. If you liked what you saw, please go online, research the local theaters, local community theaters, live theaters, improv theaters in your area, and find out if they're opening soon, open now. If there's a way that you can contribute to them, please do, because theaters across the country are hurting pretty badly right now. If you're in the San Antonio area, if you've ever seen us perform, if you've been to Bear Stage, or if you just liked the show, go to bearstage.com and there's a donate button right on that front page. Folks, thank you all again for watching. Thank you again for my panelists. And I hope to see you all on Friday. And by the way, Friday's that special day where you get to watch us at 6 o'clock and then the Tic-Tac-Toe show at 8 o'clock. So, and there's a nice little 30-minute window in there for you to go grab some food and then come back to your computer. So I hope to see you guys on Friday. Thanks again, guys. Bye.
Bye.